In terms of what lessons I wish I knew several years ago when I started my PhD, it would mostly be to get as much of the experimentation and basic science done with your project while still in academia. I think that academia provides a really great foundation and environment to do innovative research, be it through grants or sponsored research. And once you transition to a company and you start trying to charge money for those services, it basically becomes more complicated. So there's always additional work that investors or customers are going to want done, and the more of that work you can do in an academic setting, the better off you'll be later on. So we were fortunate enough not only in location and geography, but also in time. So when we founded Relay Technology Management in April of 2008, it was actually right at the time when the Tufts Classical Business Plan competition was getting started. And we submitted a business plan to that competition and were fortunate enough to be selected for the finals. At the finals, we presented really well and they selected us for winners. So that gave us not only some public, basically some startup money, as well as some free services such as real estate and consulting services as well. So that really gave us the impetus to sort of act on the company, and a little bit of startup capital as well. Since then, we've been fortunate enough to participate in things like Mass Challenge, which is a global startup business plan competition hosted in Boston, and that has also provided incubator space as well as funding to several companies. So if you're in the right location, there are various ways to offset some of the costs. In terms of legal costs, one of the things I wish I knew a little bit earlier was that many of the top law firms are very interested in building relationships with up-and-coming emerging companies. So what they'll often do is put programs in place where they will actually defer some of the legal costs until a financing event or until a certain point in time. So identifying ways to minimize those costs up front, I think, is a really great strategy. In terms of being a young scientist entrepreneur, there are both advantages and disadvantages. Some of the advantages are that you have a little bit more financial leeway, so you can go out and risk, and it's not going to, you don't have putting kids through college and mortgages and car payments quite yet. Some of the disadvantages, though, are that you really need to prove to potential customers as well as investors that you know what you're talking about and you can execute on delivery. And this is something that really takes time, but it's all about relationship building, and that's an important aspect to any business. The more information you have at your disposal, the more power you basically have when negotiating. And this can be in terms of negotiating with the university on intellectual property rights. This can be in negotiations with angels or venture capitalists, or with potential customers as well. And I think that there is a misconception that scientists, and especially young scientists, might not really know how business is conducted, and I think that people often test entrepreneurs and scientists as to see if they can really, if they think that what they're providing is of value and what value they place on both their services and their technology. And I think it's really important for entrepreneurs and scientists to be very confident in their programs and in their own abilities, and not to be afraid to actually ask for money for services or for your time, and expect to be compensated. The only reason somebody's going to invest in a technology is because they believe the technology will work and that these are the right people to actually execute the plans. You have to believe the technology from the get-go, and you need to prove to investors and to customers that you're the person who will actually execute on the plans.